Terms like bring home the bacon or kill two birds with one stone, well, PETA considers them anti-animal language, and they share some suggestions on social media with this list. Instead of kill two birds with one stone, how about saying feed two birds with one scone? Instead of be the guinea pig, we should say be the test tube. Instead of beating a dead horse, we should say feeding a fed horse. Instead of bring home the bacon, one we all use, we should say bring home the bagels. The list continues on. Instead of take the bulls by the horn, why not say take the flower by the thorns? Feed a horse and it can be replaced, like I said, by feed a fed horse. So,
okay,
pretty interesting usage there. Are you guys on board with this idea of change? We've been talking about change a lot as a theme throughout the past few months, rightfully so, as we begin to usher into a new era here. Is this one that should also be adjusted and no longer we're comfortable with?
So let me tell you why this annoyed me. It annoyed me because
you were audible throughout those reads. You didn't like some of those.
Yeah. Well, some of them I did think were funny. It's cute. Like, I get it. But I do think overall it's just ridiculous to me because PETA, my only criticism were PETA. And let me tell you, I love animals. I have a dog. I love my dog. I recycle. I care about the environment and things like that. And I believe we should all take a role in this. It's just that PETA is so vocal on so many things, but when it comes to little black kids dying in the street on the South Side, or when it comes to politics and what our president is doing, like, they don't speak up on any of the other major issues. And it's like there's so many human rights issues, and they have such a big platform. And I understand that their focus is animals, but like they're wasting their time doing this when they could be talking about the people that are dying.
Yeah, I just don't know if that's their cause. So I think they would argue that I'm sure they care. Maybe they have other causes. It's just under that umbrella.
When does an animal become greater than a person? For them, their cause is above your life. That's how I see it.
I don't think necessarily that's fair because I do know people that are active PETA members that also wear the hat for other social causes. I don't think that's where
I don't know those people, but I guess I'm referring to the organization as a whole. They never speak up on any of the other major issues.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I just don't know if that's necessarily their lane and what they're trying to do. But I hear you. How about you, Carla?
Yeah, you guys know I love animals. I eat a plant-based diet. And I never thought about language being used in this way. Like, I use those phrases, and I guess I just never considered it until they pointed it out. But language, it is an important thing. And, you know, words that we would never think of using today were used 10 years ago. People used to say, that's gay. And it meant, like, that's stupid or that's bad. And now we all know that that's not an okay thing to say. And I think that, like, with talking about like adapting and changing our language and looking at songs like Baby It's Cold Outside, we talked about that on the show yesterday, like, we know now that maybe that song or that phrase isn't just in particular the worst thing, but it just means that, like, the hidden meanings are kind of woven into it. And so I think it's really interesting to reconsider using some of these phrases. I don't know if I'll be using let's bring home the bagels anytime soon, but you know, it gets us talking about it and considering it. I think that's what PETA's trying to do.
Yeah, we all have very differing takes here at the table, which is why we sit here together and enjoy different topics every day. My whole thing is I think it's an oversensitivity, but maybe it's something that maybe enlightens you to use tact depending on who you're around. Like, I know you're a vegan, so I'm not necessarily going to bring in my steak and eat it right next to you and talk about how great that steak is. But I'm still going to eat steak. Sure. So I think it's one of those things where maybe if I'm around somebody who's heavily involved in PETA and definitely shifts more towards that way of thinking, I'm not going to be talking about bringing home the bacon and stuff like that. Yeah. But it's not going to leave my vernacular. So I think it's just understanding who you're around and maybe having more tact. But I don't think we need to shift how we use certain words and phrases that aren't necessarily offensive, just as offensive to a section of people.
Just remember, not killing two birds with one stone. Feeding two birds with one scone.
That's pretty good stuff right there. All right, so there's been a concern about shuttling kids into Uber and Lyft because they're not allowed to drive unaccompanied minors. Now there are more apps with kids as a primary customer. Supposedly, these will work because the drivers must meet state laws for transporting minors. Also, the app requires extensive background checks, fingerprinting, and clean driving records. With all this said, would you guys ever consider this safe enough of an alternative for busy parents who simply can't get their kids from point A to point B?
I feel like if I was a parent, I would want to have one person that I really vetted and really trusted to drive my child if I could. That would be what I would want to do. It would still make me a little bit nervous.
But you wouldn't pick some random.
But I use Uber and Lyft all the time, and it's just like sometimes you
Would you put your 9-year-old child into one of these services? Would you, Felicia?
I think I might consider it. I don't know about like young, like 5 or something, but if they're like maybe 10, 11, 12, they have a cell phone, I think I would consider it. It's not ideal, but there are plenty of parents that that don't have that extra person. They don't have another
Sure.
person that can pick up their child or take their child where they need to go. And if this helps get them to an activity or get them home safely, as opposed to riding public transportation or something like that, I would be open to it.
It just makes me nervous though, because like I use car service all the time, and I've had some scary experiences
Yeah.
in them where
Yeah.
I felt uncomfortable. And I'm an adult, and little kids, like, they even more so don't know how to handle that
Yeah.
situation.
But
So
if you don't
I
have
wouldn't wanna-
anybody else.
Yeah.
True, and I think my alternative to that would be, because a lot of people I know in the city with children that are 11, 12, 13 years old, they're taking public trans to
Yeah.
get
I
feel
to
like
and
that's
from.
almost safer.
And I'm going to say, yeah, I agree. I think that might be safer because there's strength in numbers.
Yes.
It's more of a public thing. So my solution would be, because Felicia's absolutely right, you do sometimes not have a choice.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that choice, then I'd like to see, if you're throwing Billy in the car, your child who's 11 or 12, make sure there's, Jamal, Eric, and Chris that are also in the car with him. A pool sharing car.
These names.
Yeah, just trying to be diverse and culturally
Jamal,
aware.
Eric, and Chris.
Yeah, so I had them like ready.
I love
I'd
that.
like to have a couple of children in there, and they'd have to be of a certain age. I think at about 12 years old, I'd be comfortable if it was an Uber
Okay,
pool
a group.
Yeah.
That
of
could be
children.
nice.
So then
Yeah.
at least there's strength
Give
in
your
numbers.
kids some mace, make sure that they know what to do in
absolutely.
a situation. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think they're groomed more for the situation when it presents itself. But I would never, until he's 18, want him in a car with just randomly catching
Yeah.
a stranger. I wouldn't do it.